So I'm excited about this evening. We have a really, really wonderful guest that we have the opportunity to visit with tonight. Our guest this evening has been described by her peers as a true visionary, a compassionate, a thoughtful, and a very hardworking woman. She has dedicated herself to helping people achieve their entrepreneurial dreams. Through her belief that everyone has a life purpose and should be living out their passion, she has helped over 1,100 people start and maintain their businesses. Please help me in welcoming Monica Kreuger from Global Info Brokers and the Praxis School of Entrepreneurship. Hello, Monica. Oh, you're winning the prize for mute. Woo, that's okay. It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without it. I was searching for mine just before Cody said, oh, it's time for you to go on. So I understand.
Well, I wanted to have a good sip of water and I thought you didn't want to hear that. So I put mute on.
That's fair. Better than a toilet flush. I mean, I would take the
sip
of water over that. Yeah.
Thanks so much
how are
for the opportunity, Nadine. I'm good. I'm really good.
Oh, good. Absolutely. So where are you joining us from today, Monica?
From our offices here in Saskatoon. So just been here for a few days and thought I'd make use of this new room that we set up, which I guess isn't quite working yet. This is the first test of it for podcasting and videos and that kind of thing. So
okay, well,
still trying to work on the lights.
Really good from, there's always little things looking good from our end of things here.
Thanks.
Though. Yeah. So thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to have you here. You have a really wonderful story and entrepreneurial journey to share with us. So I'd love to get started, and just, you know, you and I don't know each other well, so I'd love to just find out a little bit more about you, who you are, where you're from, how you got your start in this business.
Sure. Well, you know, I was thinking about that after our conversation, and while I'm pretty much Saskatoon is my home, I would say. I was raised here. I did grow up in a family where my dad was a professor at the Lutheran Seminary, and so we were able to live in other countries, which I think really sparked my interest in diversity and learning about how other people live and how things are done in other countries. And you know, I was able to live just outside of Rome and in Oxford and in London and in the United States. And as a young person growing, I think that really shapes you. I know that one of the questions you were asking me was that. And I think that really developed my broad world vision, that we really are many peoples. And it's important that we all learn from each other and from the different ways that we do things. So that really was sort of the foundation, I think, from a young person on. I was able to certainly be part of other cultures and understand them from the perspective of diversity. I have always loved learning. From the time I was a little kid, I remember just devouring books when I was 4 and reading everything I possibly could get my hands on. I just loved diving into other worlds, I guess. And as I grew, learning just became a bigger and bigger framework for me, really, to operate in. And as you know, when I first moved out, I moved out actually into my own apartment when I was 17, I think, 16, 17 in there somewhere. I just finished high school. And I worked in bookmobiles. So that was
I remember the bookmobile.
So much fun.
So exciting when they came around. That's
so much
awesome.
Fun. My bike, and I went everywhere on my bike, and I worked all over the city, and I got to know, again, all different parts of the city, all the people that were living in different parts of the city. And it was just a way to stay in shape for sure, but I was able to make enough money for living and going to university. And when I finished university, I was able to work at the university library, which was pretty cool. So, you know, there was sort of a trend going down this working amongst books and learning, but I was not interested in going into library science or anything. I just wanted to consume. So that was part of it as well. And also as a young person, I loved creating and selling stuff. So I made everything you could possibly think of. From sort of the age of 10 on, I would make stuff and sell stuff, and loved doing that as well. So I don't know that I thought of that as a business. I just thought of it as a pretty interesting way to put put some things in people's hands that they really enjoyed, and feel that
Like you're
was
talking about craft
well,
work,
everything
or
from crafts. I loved sewing. My mom taught me how to sew, and I was commissioned to sew all the outfits for the hostesses and hosts, that's what they were called back then, for the Jeux Canada Games. I hired my
oh wow,
mom, just weird things that you would never think about. I made macrame. I did all kinds of strange things. I just tried to dabble in everything. So I love that. And then after I finished university, my husband took a degree in Toronto, and I picked up a job there working with Statistics Canada. So the first 10 years of my career was with the federal government, again, in these warehouses of information and data and research. And it was just, something I absolutely loved being a part of. So Statistics Canada was one of the first jobs. And then when we came back to Saskatoon, I worked with Industry Canada. So another warehouse. So I really found, I think, my niche in knowing that there was so much good information out there for people to be able to access. And that's where I focused my attention when I worked with the federal government in the last number of years. I wanted to find a way to get all that data into the hands of people to use at a street level. And came up with an idea, called it the Business Information Center. And the department gave me some dollars to pilot the project. And we did pilot it, and it was a success. And then I really tried to get it out onto the street in a full format. None of my efforts worked. And I have to tell you, okay, this is back in the late 80s, and there was still a lot of bias against women succeeding in their professions. And I had a boss at that time who told me that I needed to go home and be home with my 4 children. And so taking this idea forward didn't materialize. So after many tries, I decided I needed to leave. And so I quit this well-paying government job and stepped out into trying to set up a business that would provide information to businesses to help business owners make better business decisions. So that's kind of where that went. I had no, other than experiential learning,
Sure.
making and selling stuff. I really had no clue how to start a business, other than reading it in books in the library, because there was nothing out there to help you or support you back in the late 80s, early 90s. It was pretty much you're out there on your own, or you find a kind business person who might want to sit down and have a chat with you. But that wasn't really the case at the time, because everybody was struggling to survive. It was double-digit interest rates, double-digit unemployment, double-digit inflation. Businesses were, at their top bankruptcy levels.
Right.
So, in many ways, something like COVID, except without the double digits from that perspective, it was a survival game.
Sure.
Yeah,
I find
so
it
that's where
fascinating.
the idea came from.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that in your heart you believed, I do have an idea. It is a good idea. It is needed, but how do I get it to somebody who's going to listen? So this idea of what do you do with the naysayer? So someone who puts their hand up and says, no, I don't believe in this. It obviously propelled you to work harder or to prove this person wrong. Have you seen that in a few instances when you're working with entrepreneurs trying to get a start?
Oh,
Have they?
absolutely. Yeah, I would say, it's one of the first things we discuss in our groups. It's actually on the very first day, is one of the things that can prevent people from sort of tapping into their deep creativity is other people telling them that they're not creative, or telling them that their idea isn't worth anything and they really should go find a job. So it's very common that people are discouraged. And I think it's, I think people will think it's not out of a bad place. It's trying to save people or protect them.
Protect, like, I don't want you to leave a safe job and go out on your own and have this big risk. What if it doesn't work out?
That's right.
Yeah.
But, failure is such an important part of the journey. And making those mistakes is really important. And I think if people aren't sort of ready to do business as a career, they're not prepared to understand the role of failure and, things not working out. And you just have to keep moving forward and, pick the lessons up from those failures. And if you don't have any failures, I can't imagine what success looks like. I think you need to have those failures to know how to improve and get better and create something new. And yeah, I can't imagine you do it without making some real mistakes.
Exactly. Out of curiosity, would you ever have been in contact with that person again, your old boss, to say, look at me now and look what I've done? No.
Honestly, I think he was about my age. And I think about that. I think about that. How could you think so old? Like, I can't think that way. I think it's a mindset. And I think he was just very traditional, and he just couldn't see a role for women moving up the ladder. And that was it. It was just a done deal. Try as I might, I couldn't get any change because the system wasn't set up yet for women to have a equitable role.
Yeah, well, it's so nice to see that is a thing of the past. I know some of those attitudes still exist, and women feel the need to work even harder and prove themselves. But I think that's okay, because if you do have some barriers, that's just sort of when your instinct kicks in and you do want to prove people wrong or prove yourself right, I guess. Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you took some faith.
Yeah.
So Stats Canada, you go out, that chapter is ending. So what are the first steps that you took in launching your company, and sort of when did that all come together for you?
Well, certainly I had conversations with my husband, because we did have 4 young children at home. He was in a business that was struggling at the time.
Okay.
And we had to decide whether we're going to sort of double up the risk. And what could we live on? What could we live with? But we had learned a lot from his business. And again, the struggles became the lessons, which became the curriculum for our program to start with. And I was able to share the space that he had, so we didn't have some of those new overhead costs. I went and wrote a business plan, and I put it on a typewriter. Can you even imagine that?
I missed that sound. And the king. Oh yeah.
So I found a book in the library, How to Write a Business Plan. And I pulled that book out and I typed it up, and I had no idea. I mean, the research was just stuff out of my brain. I knew something about the industry, because what I wanted to do was set up this sort of, it was called information brokerage. And that was the industry at the time, what it was called. So I had done a fair amount of research on that in order to come up with the idea I provided to the government. So I had that part down, but how the rest of it would work, there was no templates. There was just nothing to work on. So thankfully, I always loved math too. So I was able to pull some numbers together and, get to a bank and get a loan and and all of those things, which I think I told you, Nadine, within the first 3-4 months, that loan was pulled. Because our account manager that came on, it was a new account manager, decided that woman-owned business was too risky. So he gave me a nice little call and said, you owe us that money back. So
I don't think that's legal.
It was then. It was then. So, you just keep moving forward. And
there's some significant obstacles that you faced right away, with people just not necessarily believing in the idea. And we take it personally to be like, do you not believe in me that I can do this? I've done the legwork.
Yeah. Another challenge, but we just move forward. Yeah. So I started, what do you do? I couldn't because I didn't know the market and I didn't understand that people didn't want to pay for research. They did in Toronto, but not in Saskatoon. Very quickly, I realized I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And what people were asking for was a business plan. So, wow, I'd written one. I'm sure I could write a second. So I did, I think, a total of 6 business plans. Realized I didn't like that either, because I didn't like to write for somebody. I wanted to help people do this themselves. So that was, you know, all these little lessons you learn, right? Three months, 4 months, 5 months, it's very fast learning, and you shift constantly until you find something that starts to catch. And, you know, I was listening to something the other day my husband had shared, which was the importance of understanding how luck plays a role in your life.
Oh, it's
And
huge.
I had somebody who came into my office one day and said, I have been asked by the government to put together and design an entrepreneurship program, a self-employment program. I can only do about a 10% of it. Can you help? And I went, again, sure, like I've done this before, but I'm a good researcher, right? So I said yes, and we jumped on board and we developed the first program. So.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, that is
worked.
amazing. Yeah, and that is like the intersection between timing and luck, being open for an opportunity. They obviously sought you out in that position that hadn't even been created yet, just because you had set yourself up for that opportunity.
Yeah.
So this is Saskatoon. You're working with the government and then also in your own private sector. When did you actually have your little first classroom, or did you already at that point when you were?
No, our first program we ran in 1991. So that was the first contract we had with the federal government at the time. And we had, I think, 24 students. They only ran them once a year to start. And I think I told you, Nadine, it was an absolute abysmal failure. That first program just blew up. It was not good. I guess there were 16 people. Out of the 16 people, one person started a business. And they're still in business, by the way, which is pretty amazing, but only one person started. And, you know, because I understand the role of failure and I don't like to give up, the person I developed this with, we both sat down and said, okay, we've got to figure out what went wrong. We figured it out. We went back to the government and said, okay, it was a pilot. We'd like you to give us another shot. And they said yes. And so we redesigned how we decided who should come into the program. It was really the people that were in the program more than the program itself.
Okay. I was going to say, it sounded like a tough climate at that time anyway for people to launch into business. So how much of it was really truly on your shoulders versus just trying to break into that world at that time?
Yeah, I think we just didn't choose the right people. You know, it's a group-based learning. It's people who have to share. It's people who have to support each other. And none of these were that. They were all very fiercely independent and really had no desire to help each other. So the second program we ran, we changed a few of the things, we lengthened it a little bit, and it was just an amazing success. And then we haven't looked back since. So, you know, the opportunity that this is the role of failure, right? This is why we need to do things a second time. We can't just do them once. We have to do them again. So I think the importance of that, I think, is critical as well.
Well, there's a lot of self-reflection that goes along with that, and a lot of, I guess, embarrassment that you put your heart and soul into something and it doesn't work out, right? It's personal. So a lot of people would be tempted to not pick up the pieces and try again. And I guess it sort of depends on the degree of failure. Like, I'm always shocked when you see a really successful company or a business person and it's like, oh, they've been bankrupt 5 times. And I just go, well, how? I don't know that I'd have the stomach for that. If I'm not getting green lights, I'm tempted to just turn a different corner, right? So I appreciate you and your honesty about speaking about that failure and how it's important to realize it just is part of that journey upward.
It is. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. I would also say technically we probably were bankrupt a couple times.
Oh, we'll see. You're making
me never did. We never claimed bankruptcy, but I'm pretty sure if we looked at the numbers, it was pretty close.
Right. So it should just be a bit, not saying normalized, but that doesn't have to be something completely frightful, I guess, for people.
No, you just, again, you figure it out. You figure, what can you live with? What can you live without? You redesign your life to accommodate the dream, and you move forward. And then, you know, once you kind of stretch the pennies as far as they can go, you can pretty much do anything.
Right. Right. So speaking on realizing the dream, can we talk a little bit about how you are now selecting your students, what your program looks like, how you're helping people become successful entrepreneurs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a few programs. Our key program is something called Start Smart. It helps people who come in who have at least an idea, and it helps them take that idea into reality through a number of techniques. And also, I would say, what develops the most, I think, is the individual. So, one of the outcomes is a business plan, but
Okay.
the biggest outcome is the transformed individual, the person who's ready to really serve their community through their business and the networks that they build throughout the process. So we really focus on the person. It's very, very customized. We have some standard modules, but the whole thing is delivered in small cohorts. So we kind of have 6 to 8 in a group. We run the program overlapping 4 times a year. So it's a 9-month program, but we have a new intake every 3 months. And so the different groups can get to meet each other. They understand each other's phases. They can support each other through those phases. And I think the critical thing that we have put in place and never wandered away from is that everyone who facilitates, who coaches, who most of the speakers, they're all are entrepreneurs themselves. So they're all running their own businesses as well. So like to call it an entrepreneurship immersion. There's kind of no different, every way you turn, there's somebody who's running their business and being successful at it. So there is no teacher per se. It's people facilitating knowledge and exchange of knowledge in real time on their own businesses. So they build and craft and develop their business during the program. And then we provide support to them throughout the startup and then through their first 3 months of operation.
That sounds extremely useful, because there is, I don't think, a specific recipe that you can teach someone how to own their own business or how to be an entrepreneur, how to think like an entrepreneur. I think your idea that you watch what others are doing, you develop mentorship, is probably the best way, because it's so situational.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
So different.
It's the whole person. They've got lives that they all bring to the table. They've got communities that they live in. They've got passions. And all of these are going to vary from person to person. The exchanges that go on in the room are incredible. Like the ideas that they provide to each other, the connections they make to each other's networks, the support they provide to each other. I love to watch that. I mean, that's the building of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. It happens in real time, and it's just incredibly exciting to watch. Yeah, so yeah, we are absolutely not teachers or instructors or anything else like that. It's we come to it from our learnings, and we all learn from all the new people as well, because otherwise we would have no way to know what to change our curriculum to.
Exactly.
Right?
You're measuring your success based on theirs.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So
interesting. So you've touched a couple times on the importance of building the entrepreneur to then help their community. How is that important to you, and sort of what community involvement really speaks to you when you talk about the importance of building an entrepreneur so they can take it to their community? You mentioned this entrepreneurial ecosystem, which I think is a great term.
Yeah, I really, I'm a huge advocate and proponent for the small business. I think they're often overlooked in policy making and on their impact in their own communities. Without the small business community, we wouldn't have community. So when we work with entrepreneurs, we want them to see where their role is and what their impact is in their communities, not just getting out the door and opening the door and selling things. It's, because of my creation of this enterprise, I'm potentially hiring somebody. I'm potentially working with 4 or 5 or 6 other small companies as suppliers, or I'm potentially providing support to another entrepreneur who needs it. I'm serving the needs of my customers, and I really get to understand them because I'm a small business and I get to know all of my clients in an intimate way. So the impact it doesn't necessarily sound like it's huge, but we have 100,000 small companies in Saskatchewan. So let's think about that, and let's think about the impact of each one of them on those around them. And the same thing in their neighborhoods, right? It's the small entrepreneur who puts an ad in the community newsletter, or sponsors a local slow pitch tournament, or puts the barbecue burgers on for the community event. Like, there's so much impact that the small business has, and we want entrepreneurs to think about all of that when they're designing their business. How do they take the gifts that they've been given and activate them and amplify them so that they can raise the level of their own communities up, as well as those of the people that they serve? So we talk about service huge all the way through the program, because I want people to understand they are more than just buying and selling.
Mm-hmm. That's really an important reminder for all of us as business owners, because we do get wrapped up in the dollars and cents, just because it can be very scary as a small business not to maybe have that larger support to float yourself during specific times. But that motivating factor to say, well, I'm employing a few families, or there's someone in my community who can now come to my business because they're in my community. I set up on the street and it's convenient. That sort of reminder, I know just in hearing you say that makes me feel proud. It's like, okay, we've got this. We can keep going. We are important.
Yeah.
So I love that that's part of what you're telling people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's crucial.
So I'm curious then, what sets you apart from, someone who would go to a traditional business school? We've talked a little bit about the mentorship, but is there more that makes your business different than, you go to business school and you get a degree, that kind of thing? How do you differentiate yourself with your own business model?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. And, the first thing I'm going to say is that we're a small business. So,
okay.
we live and breathe, and this is what we love. And, the decisions we make can have a really positive and a negative impact in our business. If I make a wrong decision, we could be back to the penny pinching kind of stuff going on. So everything we do, the decisions we make are very well thought out, very well researched, because we want to provide the best we possibly can to the people who come to see us.
Mm-hmm.
I did teach at the university. I was a sessional lecturer at College of Commerce, and kind of just when it became the Edwards School, I taught Management 447, which was the entrepreneurship class, for 7 years. And we took a tiny slice of our program and provided it in that class. And the students loved it. And they loved it because we also brought to that all the experiential learning aspects to it. We brought in, business advisors and lawyers and accountants, and we had roundtables, and we had, everything was like they had to create a business. And it was difficult, actually. I had to do a lot of work to get the university to agree that we didn't have to have a textbook and we didn't have to have an exam, because we didn't. We had them create a business and make a presentation to a panel of business people. They found that incredibly useful for their learning. They said it was kind of like a capstone. It was a way to pull all their specific learnings together. So I'm not sure it's how do we differentiate? I think it's how do we work together? And that's, that's a passion of mine, and I haven't been able to make it happen yet. But I think all of the different types of training institutions and learning institutions need to work together and figure out how they can combine their different methods and different connections and different approaches, so that we can have a much elevated education system for people to tap into. Because there are absolutely things that you get in a business degree you wouldn't get in our program. And there's absolutely things that you get in our program you would never get in the business degree. So we need to be integrating all of that and saying, how do we work together so that the options that are provided in service to all the people that are in Saskatchewan are much easier to find and much more customized to the learner. Right. So I'm not successful yet, but I haven't let that down yet either.
Well, you're so insightful. You really have an amazing way to just summarize what's happening currently. What you can really tell that you have assessed the needs of entrepreneurs and that you're providing a service. It's great that you have made a business out of helping people to create their own businesses. It's important. Before I open it up to other people to ask you questions, are you still in contact with some of your students that have gone through the program? Do we know any of them in our communities? Are we allowed to talk about some of your alumni?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that is, we have an 1,100 member alumni, and many of them stay in touch, and they stay in touch with each other as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have a policy as well as in our company that we buy first from our alumni. So the whole sort of local shopping, local business, in my opinion, is just an amazing initiative, and I think it's something we have to continue to push beyond COVID. So they buy from each other, they do projects together, and we, some of them have bought and sold to each other because we've been around 31 years, so
Sure.
there's that kind of thing that goes on as well. So we really try to keep the network flowing amongst the people who've come through the program, and of course a number of them are facilitators with us now too. So, a couple of, Trax Footwear is one of our alumni. I think I had mentioned to you long time ago, the Bike Doctor was in our program. Anthony's Fashions for Men on First Avenue is one of ours. And then we've had people in forestry up in the north. We've had fishing. We even had a mine.
Okay.
We've
Wow.
had wholesale and retail, lots of services and consulting. There hasn't been really one industry that has, been more than another. We pretty much reflect the industry breakdown that there is in Saskatchewan. So, even into the agriculture, we've had projects out of there as well. So a real good broad stream. And I think Elizabeth is here to come through the program, and so her writing and editing business, and also she's one of our facilitators. So we try to utilize and promote our alumni all the time.
Sure, it's a continuous cycle of networking and information sharing and information gathering. Clearly that is the strength that you have. That I know when I was doing my own startup, that was pretty intimidating. As where do I go for information? Who do I talk to? What's current? What applies to me? If you don't really have that background, like, do I need a GST number or don't I? All those kinds of things that swirl around in your head. And you take a little bit of a convoluted path, but it sounds like you're really helping people to streamline it, and ultimately become successful. So
that's awesome. At the end of the day, we want them to join the chamber. So we have the chamber come and present, and it's one of the best places for people to network and build.
It really is.
Oh my gosh! The first thing I did when I joined the chamber was to join the SABEX committee. And that just introduced me to so many businesses, and, caught my interest and my passion. And I just said, this has got to be, anything we do has to connect back to the chamber, because there's just so many opportunities for learning and networking. So yeah, it's critical.
Example, such as what we're doing here. Example, I can't speak to how much great opportunity there has been by bringing people together in this forum. So I did want to talk just quickly about COVID. I know I said it was going to be the last question before I hand it over, but I'm curious how, obviously you're not immune to having gone through challenges and struggles. Was this different for you, or did you sort of look at it and have to adapt your program significantly? How did you manage to sustain your classroom over this time?
Well, we did have to change overnight, like many people did, and go completely virtual. My husband has his master's in distance education, so that came in handy. And we
Coincidence.
He's the educator, the technical education stuff, and I have the technical business stuff. But it distance education and virtual learning are still, there's still a transition to do there. So he invested a lot of time, and we invested money in a number of tools and a number of platforms, and we've just pretty much experimented for the last year. And we've told all of our people in our programs, that's what we're doing. We're trying things out, we're iterating, we're fixing, you know, you're going to get all the stuff you need, but we're going to keep working on what works better. And you're our, you know, our guinea pigs, and you're going to tell us what's working and what's not working. So that's been what we've done. We also developed a couple of new programs. One was called Stay Smart, to help people stay in business during COVID. So we had 19 people in that program, and they all stayed in business, which was great. So it was a 6-month program. And we're just launching next week something called Grow Smart. So it'll be built on a similar model, but its focus is going to be on helping people go to the next level of growth. And I think this is the perfect time to launch it coming out of COVID.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. Pleasure to speak with you, and I can't wait to see you in person and network with you at a chamber event or elsewhere in the community. So you have so much to teach us. So I appreciate all of your hard work and your advocacy on behalf of small business and the chamber.
Thanks, Nadine.
So thank
really
you.
Yeah,
of course. So I'll pass it back to you, Cody, and I'm sure there's people who would like the opportunity to chat with Monica and ask her a couple of questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Nadine, and thank you, Monica. All right, like Nadine just said, we're going to open it up for Q&A now. So if you have a question you'd like to ask Monica, please raise your hand or mention it in the chat. There we go. Sylvia, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry I don't have that wonderful background. I like your background much better. It looks like we're really celebrating. You know, I've known Monica. Monica, I think we go back about 30 years, most certainly with Brent. When he had his previous business. And I would like to share with everyone who's in attendance who may not know Monica as well. But one of the character traits, and she has many wonderful character traits, but the one that I have that has just been absolutely stalwart has been the one of integrity. And courage. I mean, courage and integrity are just so fundamental. Monica, thank you for today. I just so enjoyed hearing you, and there were things I didn't know, so I learned even more today. The question I have of you is this around entrepreneurship. We have come to know and come to see that the entrepreneurial mind and spirit is really a different spirit. Like it is different in some fundamental ways. Can you perhaps elaborate on that from your many years of experience? What is it, and especially that you've seen with your students, and how can we cultivate that entrepreneurial spirit within organizations in perhaps a more successful way?
Good question. I think the entrepreneurial mindset, number one, we've used this word a million times, but I don't think it is any less important when answering this question. And that's resilience. You know, entrepreneurs are constantly thinking of ways to do things, ways to get around things, ways to push through things. And every time a problem arises, they find another solution. And in many cases, that problem, in my opinion, was there to find a better solution than what you had to begin with. So I think, you know, focusing on creativity and problem solving and making sure that the person they're serving is always better served as a result of the work. I think that is key to an entrepreneur. They're always thinking of who they're serving and how they can do a better job of it, and how they can, you know, also develop those long-term relationships. I think a successful business can't survive unless you know how to develop really good, solid, long-term relationships and know how to make those relationships shine for the other person as well. So helping lift others up will help lift you up. And I think entrepreneurs do really well at that. They don't just think about themselves. They think about the broader picture, because every decision they make has an impact, a ripple effect. So they can't just decide for themselves alone. I think also there's a determination in entrepreneurs to get things done. So I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about the whole concept of discipline and how we bring that into the entrepreneurial mindset, because that's one of the things that sometimes goes awry. I know I can have 42 ideas and I'm down all these paths and I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do next, and a decision can actually be difficult to come to. So the process of bringing discipline to entrepreneurship, I think, is maybe that next step. I see it in, current entrepreneurs that have, they've got a much shorter window to make things happen than we did when we started our businesses. So in order to make it happen, they've got to kind of get on a path and get it done. And to do that, you have to focus. I think that is something I'm seeing more of now in successful entrepreneurs compared to the past.
And if I may just ask another question here, because I think this is so fascinating and so interesting, because of course in our background, in our family, we have the entrepreneurial spirit. And it is, Rick used to say, I love hanging my toes at the edge of the cliff. I said, your foot is a little bit too far, but he would be hanging there even on his nails. But, it was amazing to watch and amazing to be part of that. And great things came out of it. Do you, it used to be the average was 7 years that a business would be in existence. And I'm expecting that this is more around the entrepreneurial business, because I think the entrepreneur is used way too broadly. There's business and there's entrepreneurship, very quite different. Do you know right now what the duration of a business is? Like say with your students, what is the duration of success for years that your graduates are having going through the program that you're offering?
Mm-hmm. So we know that the people that come out of our program reach break even in half the time that other businesses who don't take training do, which is very critical, and that they're in business twice as long as someone who doesn't do the prep work or the pre-planning work and training work. We were really surprised to see that, but I think it's because they've gone through all of the decisions ahead of time with some research that you go through anyway when you don't know what they are ahead of time, and you just kind of stumble through them anyway. So it just takes longer. This way they're able to make decisions that have a little bit more longevity to them, a little bit more resilience as well. So I think what I'm seeing that a lot more out of people that come out of the program. But the other thing I'm seeing, because this process helps work on the individual themselves, and they start to understand their capacity to serve, and they understand what their gifts are and how they can actually activate them through their business, there is a whole other set of changes that occurs in the entrepreneur that I think will do them beyond the business, the life of the business. So they'll be able to, I've seen them better able to plan their futures and their family futures, because they can see it all as a whole, right? And it's not just stumbling through the next most important decision that has to be made tomorrow. So I think that whole process, the whole process of thinking forward and planning forward is applicable to many situations in a person's life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'll turn back to our host. So thanks, Monica. Wonderful to see you.
Thank you, Sylvia, for the question.
Okay.
Great question, Sylvia and Monica. Well thought out answers. Thank you so much. Our next question is from Jason. Jason, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Thanks for tonight. It's always great. I heard some of these examples and pieces of your personal history before, but I always learn something new. So I want to thank you for tonight. I want to ask you how you coach some of your students and peers who are either working professionals or entrepreneurs, how to get out of their own heads when they are spinning in all of the issues and challenges and problems tied to their business or idea. It can be really hard to get out of that zone, and of course you're not very productive. Do you have any tips or strategies for people who need to get out of their own heads for a while so they can come back to it fresh?
Well, I think my biggest tip is to have other people you can talk to about it, and not necessarily just your coach. So I have several people that I turn to when I'm stuck. One of them is Sylvia, who's here today. And I've got probably 4 others that are in different stages of business, different types of business, and who I am not afraid to hear. I'm not afraid to hear what they have to tell me. And I think it's also what we advise our entrepreneurs to do, is to have people that they just are willing to hear. I don't want to call it advisors. I just want to call it confidants, or, people that you trust. And to ask the tough questions. When we do coaching sessions, we focus on getting them to basically outline where their troubles, where they think their issues are. And it's rarely that that's the issue. The issue is something else, like they haven't got enough information, or they're thinking that they're moving too quickly when they actually do have enough information to make a decision. So you pull out the actual issue, and then we work through that step by step. I think people try, especially entrepreneurs, we try to tackle things all at once instead of crumbling them down into small bits that we can chew up. And it's usually 1 or 2 pieces that are too big that need to be chewed well before you can finish the whole problem. So the self-reflection, I think, and helping people identify themselves, what the different pieces are in that problem, that's a huge skill. It is a huge skill. And even though I do it fairly well, I still meet situations where I cannot make a decision without talking to somebody else first. So I have those people, and again, right at the beginning, we say you need to build this team of people, including your accountant and lawyer, who are on speed dial on my phone, by the way. And somebody in insurance, because that's another key person, plus 2 or 3 people that you're willing to hear. So that's a professional team in my mind. And I don't care how big, if you're a 1-person company, it doesn't matter. You need that team to be able to help you through what it is you need to decide upon. Because running a business isn't about being on your own. It can't be. No successful business I've ever met has said they've done it all by themselves. It just doesn't work that way. So that would be my quick tip.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Our
Thanks,
next
Jason.
question is from Trisha Ladeoff. Trish, if you want to unmute.
Okay. Hi, Trisha.
Hi.
My question is, I'm thinking about the high school student out there, and we put so much emphasis about getting that university degree to become whatever, a teacher, a nurse, you name it. But I'm just wondering about providing the student at the high school level with another option. Entrepreneurship as a career option. And I don't know, what's being done at the high school level to provide that for those high school students. I know we did have junior achievement, but that doesn't exist anymore here in Saskatoon anyway. I'm just wondering your thoughts about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another big passion of ours. We developed a secondary piece store company called Praxis International Institute, and its focus was to work with high school aged youth, particularly on entrepreneurship, but on a few other topics as well. And our goal was to develop an alternative learning space or school to help young people who wanted to pursue entrepreneurship as a career. It's difficult to do that within an existing system. So we've ended up developing programs where we work one-on-one with youth, and also in partnership with a couple of online schools where we focus on entrepreneurship. But you are absolutely right, Trish, and it should be considered to be a career, and it should be, mainstreamed as that. But I'll tell you a little offside story. Entrepreneurship doesn't actually have an occupation code. And Statistics Canada is the one who assigns these codes. So we have asked them to look at putting a code together for entrepreneurship, because that is how things weave their way into systems. If it's actually considered to be a profession or a career, it'll actually start to be talked about. It hasn't happened yet, but I did have a slight win a number of years ago when I actually went to tax court. I won't give you that backstory, but I'll tell you that I won. And it had to do with whether or not our school, the Praxis School of Entrepreneurship, was providing an actual career. And the government was saying it wasn't because there was no code for it. And so I challenged that, and we went to court. And on the day of the court's session, I had my lawyer with me for sure. They invited me up to provide my comments, and of course they say, state your name and occupation. So I said, without thinking, I said, my name is Monica Kreuger and I'm an entrepreneur. And the judge looked at me, and he looked at the tax judge, or the government prosecutor, and said, do you have anything to add? Because I think we're done. And it was the end. Like we had prepared all of this documentation, but he looked at the whole thing and he said, and now there's case law that says entrepreneurship is actually a career. So I've saved this piece from that court case and I sent that in to the government and said, this is actually a profession. So I completely agree with you, Trisha, and I think there is so much more that we need to do to bring this to light. I think it's going to be a more and bigger opportunity for young people to pursue, and it's going to be a career of choice in the future, I think. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's totally fantastic. I can see everyone just blowing up with grins and start laughing at that. We're going to wrap up the Q&A with our last question from Tbone.
First of all, I love your headset. You sound amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
If I'm talking to somebody about you and about your school, and I'm actually, my question is along the same lines as Trisha's too, but it's I want to be able to do you have classes? And if they are, what are they? So that when I'm telling people about what you teach, so they can wrap their head around your school, they can kind of get a picture of it. Because I could see myself having this conversation, and if I can't tell them kind of what classes you teach, it might be a harder conversation to have. So,
yeah, we do for sure. We have a full curriculum. We've got 80, I think it's about 85 modules, and it's about 200 hours worth of learning. And so that's the full program. One of the things we're working on this year, though, as well, is breaking it into pieces and building a micro-credentialing process for it, so people can take it in little chunks who don't have time to do the whole thing all at once. So we're working on that, and I'm pretty excited about that. So that will be the next thing out, and you'll see that on our website. So we've got all of that coming out on the website as well. And they can just, call us if they have any questions. We have, this is the other part about being an entrepreneur, right? We have the phones. My husband and I both, he bought into the business a number of years ago, and we have all the office phones, not only in our offices, but at our home. So we take calls on Saturday evening at 8 o'clock. So people can ask us questions anytime, and we would welcome having anybody call us or emailing.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Tbone.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Monica, thank you for the answers to the Q&A and the engagement. This has been educational, fascinating, and just thoroughly enjoyable through and through. So let's give Monica a last round of applause here.